So I'm supposed to follow artificial intelligence and 3D printing and that wonderful clip and Joe Hage to tell you how exciting ISO 13485 is. That wasn't very loud. I mean, have you guys not had coffee yet? Who is excited about 1345 2016? Everybody. Yeah. Well, anyway, I am excited about 1345 2016 because, well, let me share a story. I got a lot of slides today, and Joe, I remember a couple years or several years ago, we did a webinar on 14971. Who loves risk management? Not as many people as 1345. But anyway, Joe, as we were prepping for the webinar, he's like, you got a lot of slides. You're not going to get through them. You know, it's like he was trying to psych me out. And I got through them. Don't know if I'll get through them all today. But I want to tell you a story. I got into the medical device industry somewhat accidentally, I suppose. I'm a chemical engineer by degree. And, you know, when you get to that point in your senior year, you're looking for a job. And you don't really know what it is that you want to do. I mean, you're 22 years old. I mean, who knew what they wanted to do when they were 22? Who knows what they want to do now? You know, life changes. But I knew one thing for certain. I didn't want to live in my parents' house. I needed to have some sort of income. And so chemical engineering in the late 90s, not a real great, exciting field, at least for me. I could have worked in gas and oil. I could have made potato chips. I don't even like potato chips, you know. So I had friends that said, hey, we interviewed with this medical device company, and you know they're looking for more engineers. You should submit your resume. And I did, and they gave me a job. And I didn't know what I stepped into. And it didn't hit me really for quite some time. I mean, I was a product development engineer for a company called Cook Medical. I worked for the critical care division. I designed and developed central venous catheters, emergency airway devices, things of that nature. I would be at an event not too dissimilar from this, and a physician would hand me a cocktail napkin sketch, literally. I mean, who has had that experience? Anyone? It happens, right? Where you're drinking a little bit of bourbon or Miller High Life or whatever it is, and the doctor is saying, hey, he gets his pen out and he says, hey, can you do this? And he draws it and sketches it and hands you the cocktail napkin. And I'm an engineer. I can freaking do anything. And I'm like, yeah, I could do that. And lo and behold, I get to go back to the office. I get to, you know, put the safety glasses on and go into the lathe, and I get to machine different parts and pieces, and I get to, you know, learn how to use CAD, all of these fascinating things to build prototypes of this concept. And then I get to test it. I mean, it is the greatest thing in the world. It really is. And I know I'm not specifically on topic with 1345, but I'll get there, I promise. There was a moment in my career, I had been at Cook for about a year and a half or so, and I was working on this product called the Double Lumen Introducer. And it's a catheter type product that goes into the subclavian vein, and it has two different lumens. Lumen is like an opening. So think of it like a catheter is kind of like a drinking straw, but imagine your drinking straw has two different channels, and they're separate from one another. Okay, so this introducer, through one of those channels, they would put a catheter called a Swan-Ganz catheter, and it would go directly into the heart to measure cardiac output. I got to design this product basically redesign it from scratch. And I got to be present for the first time that product was ever used clinically. Sounds exciting, right? So I arrive at the hospital. It's about 6:30 in the morning. Anesthesiologists, they start the day early. So I'm there. I never met this particular anesthesiologist before that morning. I spent literally 5 minutes with him in the lounge, going over a non-sterile product. Just, you know, he's like, looks pretty good. Cell technique, needle guide wire, a catheter, no big deal, you know. 5 minutes. He's like, all right, go change into scrubs. So I changed into scrubs. I walk into the operating room. Has anybody been in the operating room to watch a procedure? All right. So you might be able to relate to this. So I'm in scrubs. I put the things on my boots. I don't have any hair, but I put the thing on my head. Anyway, you can't tell who anybody is in an operating room. And I just met this person for 5 minutes. And I'm trying to figure out who is the guy I just talked to, because all I can see is, just this little band of eyes. And he's like, I'm over here. So he opens the sterile kit and he starts using the product. And I had an oh shit moment. Because I designed this product. I was involved with the manufacturing of this. I worked with the manufacturing department who built this. I'd done all the testing. I'd done all the design controls. I had assessed the risk. But it's like, oh crap. This is the first time this product has ever been used on a person. And I'm standing 5 feet away from that moment. That moment changed my life, because this is when I realized that we in the medical device industry, we improve the quality of life. So, how does that relate to 1345? And by the way, the procedure went fine. I mean, I was freaking out, but my heart rate accelerated. I felt like I was going to jump out of my chest. I could feel sweat just pouring down my body as I'm watching this. And it seemed like that simple procedure, which takes just a couple minutes at most, it seemed like it took an hour. It was forever. And it was one of the most fascinating, scary, and exciting experiences I've ever had. It's the closest I've ever been to practicing medicine, to be a product development engineer, to design medical devices that are used to save people's lives. We have an awesome responsibility in the medical device industry. Now, for so long, for the past 20 years, some of the things that have happened in our industry have, frankly, they've been frustrating, because what has been happening is there's been all this change in regulation, all this change in the requirements, and quality systems this, and design control that, and risk management that. So much so that I've talked to more people than I wish who have said, John, I used to have that passion for medical device that you talk about. I used to have that. But I'm so disenfranchised in 2018 because all they are doing is making it harder. But what if they didn't have to? What if all of this changed? What if the new regulations in Europe? What if 1345, 2016? What if MD, SAP? What if all of these changes didn't have to make it harder? What if you could design your processes, your approach in a way that's simpler? What if you could do that? Would you be excited about working in the medical device industry again? So, does 1345, 2016, do the words on this standard, do they do that? No, they do not. But you do. It's up to you. I talk to engineers, and sometimes they'll say to me, John, I hate design control. I'm like, no, you don't. You do not hate design control. Like, no, we do. We hate it. All the paperwork, all the documentation. I'm like, hey, time out. Engineers, design control is about demonstrating your product is safe and effective. It meets the indications for use. This is what you do for a living. This is why you are a product development engineer. You do not hate design control. You hate your process. And that's true. So many companies have evolved their quality management system. They've evolved their practices, their procedures, their documentation requirements, and they've made it ridiculous. So crazy. Form for this, a form for that, a form for this. Now don't mishear me. There are minimum requirements that we have to have in place. Because if it's not documented, it didn't happen. So we need that objective evidence, that proof. But let's take our blinders off and let's look at this in a more holistic view. And I think this is one of the ideas behind 1345, 2016, is that it gives us an opportunity to apply a more holistic view. Because what has happened in the past 15 to 20 years is, from a quality system perspective, is we have thrown all of that responsibility onto the quality function. But I assure you, we all have a role to play in effective implementation of a quality management system. So there's a ton of information. So I guess I'm curious, how many of you have already been through the ISO 1345 2016 certification process? How many of you are still planning on going through that process? All right, so the time, if you haven't started that process, the time is now. There are some real ramifications if you don't start that process now. Know that registrars, the entities who do the ISO certification, they're backed up. They're in high demand right now. There's fewer of them than there ever have been as well. And the other thing that's happening is, we've got changes in Europe, we've got changes with Canada and the MDSAP, and all of these things are happening. So if you have to get the 2016 certification, if that's something that's important to your entity, I hope you've started that process now. There's a lot of benefits to this. And if you need a copy of these slides, let me know. I'll be happy to send them to you. Just shoot me a note. But there's a lot of reasons why this standard has changed. The previous version of the standard was in 2003. A lot has happened from 2003 to 2016. I mean, that's 13 years. What were you doing in 2003? What were you doing in 2016? A lot of things have changed. I mean, do we even have smartphones? Did I even have kids? So a lot of things happen. So the reason for this standard to catch up is really to just that, catch up. It's to regulatory bodies and quality systems and the interpretation of all of the different requirements has evolved a great deal. So in many parts of 1345, yes, there are a lot of changes to that standard. Yes, it is more, I guess, robust than the previous version by far, but it really, for all intents and purposes, is catch-up. So for those of you that are in the audience, how many of you have been through an FDA inspection? All right, so the good news for you, I mean, that was, I'm sure, has anybody told you how much fun and excitement you get to have at an FDA inspection? It is one of the most stressful things. It might be more stressful than that operating room experience that I described. But the good news is the 1345 standard, the 2016 version, is like almost one-for-one with FDA. And, my new friend Mark, I spoke to him, and they went through the 2016 process, and he said it's pretty easy. Pretty easy because they live quality. They don't look at quality as the quality department's role. It's embraced throughout the culture of the organization. And I think this is a real key thing that we all need to leave here today and tomorrow and take back to our organizations, and that is this, that compliance, we could do that. We could check boxes, we can fill out forms, we could go through the motions, and we could say, yep, we're compliant. We could pass FDA inspections, we can pass ISO audits. And if we don't understand the intent, the purpose, the meaning behind the processes and the procedures that we put into our organization, then we kind of miss the mark. So what I challenge you all with is, what does true quality mean? How do you apply this methodology across your entire organization, from the engineers to the manufacturing to regulatory to doc control, every facet, sales, marketing, every facet of your business? How do you embrace this concept of true quality? So there are, for those who are pursuing this, there are 5 key things that you absolutely should do. I know number 1 seems silly, get a copy of the standard. But it's not, because I work with companies, I work with a lot of companies going through the ISO certification process, and that's the first question I ask them. I'm like, do you have a copy of the standard? Like, no. You're going through ISO 1345, 2016, and you don't even have a copy of the standard. Spend the $160, buy the standard. It describes and defines all the requirements, all the clauses. The standard is also good because one of the key things that you need to understand as you pursue the 2016 certification process is what has changed from 2003 to 2016. And the standard actually has an annex that's very good, it's very descriptive, very specific, and it goes through item by item what has changed. So understand what has changed. And then for those who are in an FDA environment and need to adhere to 820 quality system regulations, you'll want to know that too. And the good news is, contact me. Actually, if you go search Google, you can do it right now on your phone or on your computer, ISO 13485 QMS checklist. There will be a blog post, content piece from Greenlight Guru where you can download a checklist for free. And it lists all the FDA clauses in the 1345 2003 and the 1345 2016. So I'm going to encourage you to do that, because a gap analysis is going to be important. You got to understand where you are and where you need to move. I would also encourage you to contact your registrar because, as I already communicated, there's a lot of things changing in the world. I mean, think about it. In 2018, we're dealing with 1345, 2016. We're dealing with the new medical device regulations, IVD regulations in Europe. And we're dealing with MDSAP. Now, I've been in the industry for 20 years, and I can tell you with 100% certainty, at no time in the history of the medical device industry, at least in my 20-year tenure, have we seen this amount of change, this significant amount of change. I mean, just any one of these things by themselves is significant. Couple that with, you got Brexit happening, And some of you may say, well, what does Brexit have to do with 1345? Well, how many of you have registrars and notified bodies that are based in the UK? You don't have to raise your hand, but you can. Thank you for sharing that. Pretty soon, UK is not part of the EU. It's just significant because if those UK-based registrars and notified bodies are not going to be recognized by the European authorities, you're going to have to change registrars and notified bodies. You're going to have to go through a new certification audit. You're going to have your tech files re-evaluated, re-audited, re-inspected. So Brexit creates noise too. So a lot of things to think about, So now more than ever, we need something simple. We need something straightforward. We need a way to make life easier. And this is frankly, I've shared a couple of stories with you, but this is frankly why I set out to create Greenlight Guru. I don't know if you've heard of Greenlight Guru, but we are an electronic quality management system software designed by medical device professionals specifically for the medical device industry. There is no other product in the world that has been designed for your quality system that meets FDA 1345, 14971, Part 11. I've used many of the systems you've looked at, and always I reverted back to paper. And it's crazy to think about. Why in the world, does paper even scale? How do we do that? So this is why we built Greenlight Guru, to make your life easier, to get to the point, to help communicate, collaborate with all the key stakeholders in your business, managing through design controls, through risk management, through CAPAs, through complaints, all of the key workflows where you need that visibility, a single source of truth. Now, I've talked to hundreds and hundreds of people about 1345, 2016, and I think one of the things that freaks people out is this notion of a risk-based quality management system. What does that mean, right? There's like 222 references to risk or risk-based or regulatory in the new 2016 version of the standard. I don't think it was mentioned hardly at all in the previous version of 1345. And there's now all these references to 14971. What does it mean? Does that mean that when I have a CAPA that I need to assess and evaluate the risk of my product? Yeah, that's exactly what it means. But risk-based approach. How do I apply a risk-based approach to my suppliers? How do I apply a risk-based approach to my complaint process? How do I apply a risk-based approach to purchasing? How do I do this? Right? And so there's art in this for sure. But the idea is that all of your quality system processes need to flow together. If you think about it, that cocktail napkin sketch that you get from the doctor, that you go into the workshop and get on the lathe and you make a prototype, and eventually that goes through design reviews and the design transfer process, and you take that product to an operating room and it gets used on a patient by an anesthesiologist and then gets transferred into manufacturing, and you start making these by the thousands and thousands and thousands, you're going to get feedback. Some of that feedback's going to be good. Some of that feedback's going to be bad. How does that feed back into your design control process? How does that feed back into your risk process? Do you need to take a corrective action to mitigate some issues that have been identified? So absolutely, this is a continuum. Think of the entire supply chain from the moment of getting that cocktail napkin sketch all the way through product realization, all the way through manufacturing, and every single step that happens. There are risks at every single stage. Now, from an industry standpoint, the best standard that we have in the medical device industry with respect to risk is ISO 14971. And it lays out a terrific framework of all the process that we should be following from a risk standpoint. So this is kind of the new era of quality systems, shifting from compliance focus to true quality. True quality. And that's a word. It's, quality means something different to you as it does to you, as it does to you. It's a highly subjective term. But each of you knows what quality means to you. Some people say, yeah, I'll know it when I see it. So, what does true quality mean to you? All right, so there's a lot of details here that we could go through all the specific changes. Let me, I know I can see the little clock, and I see Joe's walking on stage, so he's about to give me the hook.
He's getting closer.
But let me leave you with, again, some of the actions that you should consider. 1345, 2016 was published in 2016. There's a 3-year transition period. We're less than 1 year away from this being a de facto requirement. So if you are ISO certified, you need to make that transition to 2016 by March of 2019. If you have not done your gap analysis, your assessment, your evaluation, and so on and so forth, time is ticking. You may run out of time. You need to figure that out. Takeaways, risk-based approach, risk-based quality system. What does that mean? I can't answer that for you on this stage today. If you want me to help you answer that for you, contact me, reach out to me. I'd be happy to share my concepts, my ideas, my opinions, some of the methodologies that we've built within the Greenlight Guru software platform to help you with that endeavor. 5 key steps: get a copy of the standard, understand the differences between 2003 and 2016, do a gap analysis. That'll be key. That'll be instrumental during your ISO certification audit, presenting that to the auditor. Contact your registrar. Really get in that queue, because ISO registrars right now, it's 6 to 9 months to get into the queue. So do the math. You got to do a gap analysis. You got to do this. You got to make changes to your procedures. You got to wait 6 to 9 months. All these sorts of things. You're running out of time if you haven't done this. And then establish a quality plan, timeline, objectives, responsibilities. Treat it like a project. Some additional information. I already mentioned Annex A from the 1345 standard. There's a few other annexes. There's all sorts of information that you can go to.
Nobody reads that stuff.
They don't?
Nah. I mean, maybe they will later, but not now.
Okay. So, if you have further questions after today, or even today, you can catch me. If you all look back there, you see that number 300, there's a big G on a booth with a green line. That's our booth. So come by and learn a little bit more about our software platform. We'd be happy to help answer your questions about 1345.
Let's hear it for John Speer.